Hello and welcome to the WFC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Jason. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. It's kind of a bit of a strange evening here in Calgary. We're having to do a bit of water conservation, so it got me out of doing a bunch of tasks tonight. So I was kind of happy about that in sort of a weird sort of way. But how about you?
No, we had that big water main break in the Northwest last night and woke up to an emergency alert this morning. I think it was 6:15 or 6:30 a.m.
6:30, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of water conservation going on in Calgary at the moment. People are encouraged to take shorter showers, things like that, as the city crews work to repair this water main. Pretty busy morning for me as a result. No, I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about Calgary-related soccer stuff for our podcast this week.
If you are a new listener to our podcast, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
YYC Soccer Podcast is exactly as it sounds. We talk about soccer. We talk about it with a Calgary lens or focus. So we talk about the amateur, collegiate, and professional teams in town. We interview players and coaches, and we talk about the city's soccer community, whether that's grassroots, amateur leagues and teams, right up to the university teams in Calgary, and as well as the professional teams.
On the agenda this week, we're going to talk about Cavalry's match last weekend against Pacific and preview their match on Saturday at Spruce Meadows against Forge. We're going to talk about Foothills WFC. They had their big rivalry match against Santa Clarita last weekend. Chat about that. And a little bit of League One talk, a little bit of Calgary players that are representing their national teams. And we have an interview this week. Scott, who's our interview?
Our interview this week is Moe El Gandour, who is this summer a member of the Blizzard League One Alberta men's team. He was previously a member of Foothills last year, but he switched allegiances this summer, and he was previously a Cavalry draft pick and a star player for the Mount Royal University Cougars.
Yeah, so it was good to catch up with him and see what he's been up to the last little while here. So, we'll run that in a little bit. But let's start off by talking a little bit about Cavalry. Last weekend, Cavalry went to Victoria and they played Pacific, and the match ended up in a 1-1 draw.
Surprise, surprise. I think Cavalry fans have, similar to last year around this time, gotten very used to the team drawing. This was remarkably the sixth draw of Cavalry's season, and that's in just 8 games so far. So another single pointer for Cavalry fans. This one, I mean, it's on the road. It's against a team that is pretty much always strong in the Canadian Premier League. So nothing to be ashamed about, but maybe another example of a match that Cavalry could have snuck away with 3 points and wasn't quite able to.
Under any other circumstance, I think you'd say, well, team's going to go to Pacific and they get a point out of it. That would probably be considered somewhat acceptable, but it's just the run of draws. Just because there's been so many of them, it's just frustrating to sort of be stuck in that. And, again, there was times in this match where, it really seemed like another goal was coming, but it just never happened. Yeah,
so speaking of the goals that did occur, Pacific opened the scoring in the first half. I actually thought this was a really well-worked goal. So I don't want to really blame Cavalry's defense. I know Dan Klomp in the post-game interview kind of said that he was at fault for it. But basically, I mean, it was picture-perfect cross from Dadaloo that Stefan Yates was able to kind of ghost in front of Klomp and get his head on. But no, I think Pacific did a great job on this goal. Got the ball out wide, played it in first time, and then Yates managed to get in front of probably the CPL's best defender and kind of get like a diving header. Pacific did well to go up 1-0. Cavalry's equalizer came in the second half, and it was Tobias Warshevsky who managed to get his 4th goal of the season.
A couple things that I noticed in this match that I thought were interesting from a Cavalry point of view is that after that early goal, there was no letdown. I think that considering how things have been going this year, where it just seems like it's been kind of a frustrating run of games, to get scored on so early in the match, it wouldn't be unheard of for a team to sort of have a big letdown. But Cavalry ended up playing really quite well, and into the end of that first half, they were just totally dominating the last 10 minutes or so, and they just didn't get a goal. And then, yeah, there were stretches in the second half too where they really, really played well. Although at the very end of the match, Pacific had a couple really good chances, and they almost snuck out the 3 points, but not quite. So another draw.
Yeah, those chances you mentioned, I want to single out Fraser Aird once again for his delivery. Schmidt Showman and Bradley Camden both had opportunities off crosses. I think they were both from Aird. I know at least a couple of his almost led to a Cavalry goal. But yeah, headers from Showman and Camden. Camden hit the post with his great opportunities to get one up on Pacific. But no, yeah, I think you're right. That was an extra or stoppage time. Hey, like Pacific came close to nabbing a second goal. But in the end, I think a point apiece is kind of an acceptable verdict for this match.
I believe in the post-game presser, Tommy Wilden Jr. mentioned about frustration starting to build. But anyway, they've got a big match ahead of them here at home this weekend, and I think really going to have to be looking at getting 3 points. I know we said that before, but there's no better time to snap out of it, I think, than this weekend.
Yeah, they're playing their perennial rivals, Forge FC, who are currently in third place in the CPL with 4 wins, 1 draw, and 2 losses. But they have a game in hand over second place Vancouver FC. Will always be tough to take on Forge. Tristan Borges, I think he's fit. He's been playing really well this season. Kyle Becker is always a handful in the midfield. They've rebuilt their squad a little bit, but they're still strong from what I can tell, and they're certainly not going to want to give up anything to Cavalry this Saturday.
Definitely. And the Cavs are going to be shorthanded up front for sure, because we know that Malcolm Shaw is with Trinidad and Tobago right now, so he'll be missing this match. And I haven't heard the latest, but I think it's probably safe to assume Willie Akia won't be back from that hamstring injury. And I don't know the status of Ali Musi, but those are 3 pretty key players up front who get a lot of minutes. And
yeah, which I mean, I think it's very expected that as long as he's fit and ready to play, Tobias Warshevsky will be at number 9 for Cavalry. But who will be supplying him with passes and crosses is to be determined. I know online you speculated that maybe Cavalry could call up Chinant Chanda from League One, which he's been playing with Cavalry FC U21. So maybe, but there's also a few other players such as Nico Moroniak, who I think we might see a little more of this Saturday. But yeah, like you mentioned, Cavalry's attack is a little thinner than I'm sure the coaching staff would want it to be at the moment.
Yeah, like I think Leighton Brooks is likely to start, and Nico Moroniak, I think pretty likely he's going to see some time in this match. But yeah, the only reason I sort of suggested about Chanda was just if Musi can't go, like then it just starts to turn into like, what if something happened? You don't really have anybody else that can play up front. So that's just speculation on my part. I know he's been playing really well. So
so that game is coming to Spruce Meadows Saturday afternoon. Kickoff is at 3:00 p.m. Yeah, should be good. Cavalry's still trying to climb the table. They're, we're more than a quarter into the season now, and they're still in 6th, reminiscent of last year. But the more and more that this winless streak goes, the more frustrating it's going to be for fans as well as the players and coaching staff.
This is Izzy Monk, and welcome to YYC Soccer Podcast.
So now we can segue to talk about Foothills WFC. They had a really big match last weekend, first home match of 2024, as they took on their perennial rivals, Santa Clarita Blue Heat. Unfortunately, it didn't go quite as well as Foothills fans and players would have wanted it to. Ended a 1-0 win for Santa Clarita, ending Foothills' unbeaten start to the 2024 United Women's Soccer season.
We were both at that match, and it was pretty interesting to watch Santa Clarita. They're definitely a talented team, and they've got a kid on their team, like literally a kid. They're 13 years old. and she was playing up front for the whole match. So that was kind of interesting. But getting back to Foothills, I think that obviously a disappointing result. There didn't seem to be a lot of chances in the final third. What was your assessment, Scott?
That was my assessment. I did come late. I missed Santa Clarita's goal, which you told me came off of a corner kick. But yeah, it just seemed like Foothills struggled once they got into Santa Clarita's half. They were fine in possession up until that point, but the final third, they were just lacking a little bit of creativity or a little bit of attacking oomph. They did have a good chance. I saw, I think it was Anna Hauer who skied her shot over the crossbar, but had gotten herself into a really good shooting position on that play. But yeah, it didn't really feel throughout that second half that Foothills was going to equalize in my eye.
It just seemed like they couldn't break down Santa Clarita. They were just they were happy just to sort of play a bit more conservative to hold the lead, and there was no real extended pressure where there was that real threat. But anyway, they're going to have a chance to make up for it here. This weekend they have the bye week, but next weekend they're off to California and they're going to play Santa Clarita again, and they're going to play Los Angeles SC. So big matches, obviously. A short season, they're all big matches, I guess. But yeah, if you're going to want to extract some revenge on the Blue Heat, you don't have to wait that long.
Yeah, but they're going to have to do it in the Santa Clarita Stadium. So always a little bit trickier to beat a team on their own turf. Haven't played Los Angeles SC yet this season yet, so it's hard to evaluate that team. But results-wise, I think LA lost heavily to Santa Clarita. Is that correct?
Yeah. They lost to Santa Clarita by a big number. I don't know if it was 4-0 or 5-0. The Los Angeles team has been in this division for quite a long time, but I think they've never really been at the same level as Foothills or Santa Clarita. But and I haven't really seen too much about them yet, besides the fact they lost that game to Santa Clarita. So I don't see a lot of signs that they've taken a huge jump up. But as you said, when you're on the road, you're playing in unfamiliar territory. So I think, you always got to respect that.
Yeah. And then Foothills' next home game after that is actually against LA. And that's going to be June 22nd at Broadview. So still a few weeks away before Calgary soccer fans can see Foothills play on their home turf.
My name is Moe El Gandour, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Moving on to League One, as we mentioned earlier in the beginning of the podcast, we have an interview with Moe El Gandour. As you already said, Scott, he's been kind of an up-and-coming player on the Calgary soccer scene now for, 4 or 5 years, I would say.
Yeah, I know he was drafted by Cavalry in 2019. I actually interviewed him after he was drafted for a story for AFTN that I wrote way back then. And he's stayed very relevant in the Calgary soccer community ever since. As I mentioned, he had a really, really good career at the university level with the Mount Royal University Cougars, really helped with the growth of that team in the last 4 or 5 years. He wasn't on the team last year when Mount Royal went on to win their first ever conference title, but he really helped lay the foundation for that success. And then he's always kind of been on the cusp of a professional career. So he's one of the players that I know you and I really wanted to talk to about League One in particular, because that league really is filling a gap that existed beforehand for players, I think, like Moe El Gandour, who are knocking on the door of the CPL.
For sure. We talk about that with him. So I think we'll run the interview now, and we can hear more about his thoughts about that and other things in his career. I'd like to welcome Moe El Gandour to the podcast. Moe had a very storied career at Mount Royal, and currently this year he is playing for Calgary Blizzard in League One Alberta. Welcome to the podcast, Moe.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So Moe, it's been over a year since you wrapped up your career with MRU, maybe closer to 2 years now. Can we start by talking about what's kind of happened with your career since then? I know you've been in League One, for instance. What else would you like to kind of highlight from the last year?
Yeah, honestly, as you guys know, I've been in and out of the system with Cavalry over the past few years as a local lad here. And, once I finished my career with Mount Royal, I got a preseason invite in last year with Cavalry and wasn't really secure, but preseason invite is always an opportunity. So took it as it came. And, I think I went in and turned some heads, and I think they were excited to have me and kept me around for quite a bit. And I had a great experience. And then played down last year in the exhibition series with the League One with Foothills, and honestly had an unbelievable season. I think that was a great team and a great opportunity to get games in and go from there. And then started to slowly slow down on the playing side until this season came around again, and got a phone call, obviously, from some former coaches, and were interested in having me out with a new opportunity. And I thought, you know what, with a new league, and you never know what can happen. So giving it a go now with League One at Blizzards.
Last year you were with Foothills, and this year you made the switch over to Blizzard. And I know there's several players that made the switch over. So what prompted the change to go over and join the Blizzard?
Honestly, a new challenge. I think, like I said, over the past few years, being in the same environment was a great opportunity with Foothills and in the Cavalry environment. But, having some familiar faces out in Blizzards, gave me a little bit of a push to go and try something new. I think the whole team and the staff included are kind of experiencing a new environment, a new platform. So I think for me, that was something I wanted to chase and be a challenge. And the first season is always the most memorable one. And being a part of that team and foundation, I think, is important. And as a player who's been around the Mount Royal scene for a while, a lot of that team is made up by staff from Mount Royal and players from Mount Royal. So I wanted to give it another go and see what that team could come up with this year.
Yeah, and it seems like it's gone pretty well. How would you evaluate the games thus far for Blizzard?
A roller coaster ride, if I'm being completely honest. I think with such a short season and tight schedule, we haven't really been able to train as much as we'd like as a team. We haven't really had that preseason, as they would say. We're kind of trying to find our foot as we go. And I think, jumping into the first game, dealing with some injuries and travel and, little details, I think that takes a lot away from the results. But, I think we're finding our foot now with tactics, players, new identities. We have players from across town, different teams from out of the province. So I think trying to build that relationship as a team is super important. I think now, 3 games in, we finally found our footing, and, players are coming back from injury and the squad's finally coming together. So from here, it's just looking positive and seeing what the rest of the season can have for us.
You mentioned injuries getting picked up, and that's something we did here last week. Did you pick up an injury yourself recently?
Yeah, I've actually been dealing with a few injuries. So I initially came into the season with the hamstring injury that I've gone over and been dealing with over the past few games, and then that's kind of just a maintain game by game, day by day injury. Last week I actually got plantar fasciitis, which I've been new to. Didn't really know what it was until it happened. So I've been dealing with that over the past 2 weeks. Today will be my first day back in training to see how it feels and kind of be a day-to-day from here on out.
Yeah. Plantar fasciitis is a funny one. It is kind of a bit annoying, and it's a bit persistent, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. Honestly, it's something that changes your entire day-to-day system. Like, I've honestly been off my feet for the past week as much as I can, but with the lifestyle that we have as athletes, and I coach as well. So it's a little bit tough doing that, but it's a new injury for me, and, quite a painful injury, but, I've done my due diligence to make sure I do my recovery and get back on the field as quick as possible, obviously with such a short season.
In addition to playing, you've been involved in coaching off the field. Why don't you talk a little bit about sort of what you've been doing off the field right now?
We've actually, me and my older brother, who's a former player as well, who's dealt with his own injuries, transitioned into a coaching role. So we've actually opened up an academy out in Calgary called Elite Football Academy, which has been running for almost 5 years now. We've actually just completed a rebrand. So that's our new name and our new platform. And that's something that I've kind of gone into full time with the coaching. And obviously for me, while I was at Mount Royal, I was around, but not as involved just because of the demand with school and playing. But now that I also have some more time, I've kind of dove in headfirst into it, and we have a elite training program or advanced training program, which is available to players that play in the top 2 tiers out in Alberta. So for AYSL and Tier 1, which is what our main source of players are. And then we have a grassroots program. We have a developmental program for some players in the lower tiers. And, it's just given me an opportunity to give back. Like I said, I'm a hometown boy who grew up here, who's lived here my entire life. So, being able to give back to some of the kids that I was back in the day and my brother was is an opportunity that anyone could ask for, right? So I think it's a cool opportunity to be able to transition into a coaching role and take away from all the unbelievable coaches that I've had in my career and kind of learn all these different styles and these different coaching philosophies and bring it into my own. So I think that's something that's been a big part of my life over the past year, I would say, since, I kind of slowed down on the playing side and kind of ramped up the coaching side.
I understand, like you've played with Lebanon youth international teams, have you not?
Correct.
What levels did you play at? When was that? And how did that opportunity come about for you?
Yeah, I actually got that call pre-COVID, but as I said, I was in school and with the international camps, that's a very tough thing to do with school being in the way with the timing of the camps. Then obviously got drafted and COVID hit. So once COVID came around, obviously a lot of things slowed down. So school was online. But then I got another phone call inviting me out to train with the U23 national team. At the time I was 20 and 21. So went up to the U23 Lebanese national team. It was an unbelievable opportunity. Just being on that stage, with an international team was great. Gladly enough, once I got out there and I had a few training sessions and a few games, they actually asked me to move into a camp with the first team. So I trained with the first team for about a week out there, and then they had some friendlies that they wanted to be involved in, but that would have most likely have forced me into a cap rule at the time. So I decided not to play in the games and stick to the under 23s, obviously just with the hope of potential of the Canadian national team at some point in my career, but that hasn't happened yet. So
would you consider being cap tied to Lebanon in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually been in touch with them over the past, year or so, just waiting for some camps and stuff. But, with the political stuff and the situation out in that area right now, it's a little bit difficult to commit to a move or a camp out there. I've actually received some professional offers from the league out in Lebanon. That's kind of been a decision that I've had to make over the past few months to kind of turn those down for now, until hopefully things cool down out in that area and kind of see from there what comes.
Kind of talking a little bit more about with the future plans here and stuff. So you're 23 right now, and your best years of football are still ahead. Where do you see yourself, say, in 5 years from now when you're, say, 28?
Honestly, hope to be playing. As you guys know, like you said, you knew me back when I got drafted, and then we had a meeting. Obviously, that's the aspirations, and they're still there to be playing professionally. I just don't think the opportunities have kind of come my way. I thought the CPL would have been a great platform and opportunity for me, but as I am 23, I'm kind of on the upside of the age gap with the league and the league rules. So I think just hoping, getting into preseasons and stuff like that, or maybe going overseas, honestly, just exploring the options. And I think staying local with the CPL was a big platform for me to kind of get my career going. But, like I said, that the opportunity hasn't come, and hopefully, I can use this League One platform to kind of set my story and kind of get some eyes on me and hopefully get into a preseason or get a contract offer obviously going into next year.
I love that you mentioned League One there, because we've talked about it on our podcast of providing that platform for players who are right on the cusp of a pro career or the CPL. So do you want to maybe elaborate on how much the arrival of a league like League One means to players like yourself?
Yeah, honestly, and we can even go back to last year with the exhibition series. I know it wasn't really as official with the league, but I think the League One platform is unbelievable in two different ways. Like you said, for the players who are on the cusp of chasing their professional career, as so I think it's a way to kind of represent yourself and showcase yourself within 2-3 months, and obviously we all know that, CPL teams have eyes out on League One. You've seen it in League One Ontario and League One BC. And, this year for League One Alberta, it could be the same platform for us. And on the other side, it's for the university players who didn't really have an opportunity or an option during the summer. And I think this bridges the gap between, university soccer and the pro level. And it allows players to kind of continue on year round playing at a competitive level and bridge the two gaps, whether it's you chasing a professional contract with the CPL and playing in League One, or bridging the gap between university seasons.
You mentioned about your coaching, and do you want to talk about what website, what social media that you can be reached at if any listeners are interested in your program there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a brand new website up and going right now. All the details, obviously, for players that are interested. Our website's elitefootball.ca, and our Instagram and Facebook are Elite Football YYC. So if you have any questions or will have some interest in the program and what I provide to the program and what it's about, feel free to reach out. Visit our website. My info's on there. My work number is on the website. So those are kind of our contact information, and hopefully, this reaches some ears and provides some opportunities for players like me back in the day.
Thanks so much for taking the time to do the interview, and hope you get back to full health here shortly. And we wish you all the best in the rest of the season and beyond.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure, and hopefully we catch up soon.
Thanks again to Moe El Gandour for taking the time to do the interview. There are a couple interesting little bits of information that he revealed there. I sort of fascinated by some of the Lebanon stuff he talked about.
Yeah, like the opportunity to go play in Lebanon professionally is intriguing. Obviously, like he mentioned, there's geopolitical factors at play as well in that kind of corner of the world that factors into a decision like that. But no, it'd be cool to see him play professionally soon. I think either in Canada or elsewhere. I know I'm rooting for him to do that.
For sure.
All right. So staying on the League One topic, listeners may recall last week we had Conrad Krauser on our show. He calls the games in League One Alberta, and afterward he suggested sending us a brief 2 to 3 minute recap of the previous weekend's matches. So he sent us that, I think it was earlier today or yesterday, and yeah, we're going to run his recap of the most recent games in League One Alberta.
Hi, this is Conrad Krauser bringing you your League One Alberta Match of the Week recap for Week 4. Last week, the Match of the Week was Calgary Foothills traveling up to Edmonton to take on Edmonton Scottish. It started off with the women, and it was a wind tunnel at Riel Field, with winds gusting up to 40 kilometers an hour. Foothills used the wind at their backs to capitalize off a Tartan turnover right at the kickoff, scoring the opening goal in the opening minute off the boot of Grace Hannaford, just trickling in at the far post. Then another turnover forced the Tartans into a corner in just the 12th minute, where Layla Taraf's in-swinger had to be punched away by the Scottish keeper Jessica Spurrell, but it stayed in the 18-yard box. McKenna Ford managed to find the bouncing ball and slot it home to increase Foothills' lead to 2. Fans watching online or in person at Riel Field wouldn't have to wait long for another goal. But this time it was the Tartans answering. They forced a Foothills turnover in their own half, and this time it was Jaya Arandio bringing the gap to just 1. But only 7 minutes later, some good wing play by the combination of Veronica Walter and Jaden Tomaszowski led to a cross eventually finding Grace Hannaford to give her brace. That would bring us to halftime, and on the other side of half, Hannah Stacey would answer back for the Tartans with a gorgeous goal from approximately 35 yards out. Wind at her back, she put the effort on, and it glanced right off the bottom of the bar, just out of Sarah Bach's range to cut the lead again to just 1. But Foothills would put the match to bed with Emerald Jamison's first of the season in the 81st minute, and the Foothills women would come home with their first 3 points of the year. Then it was time for the men's side, and it would be a back-and-forth affair for the first 45 minutes, with the Tartans really attacking David Peppel on whichever wing he was on. He started on the left wing, but an injury to James Welsh would force him to the right in the 34th minute. If you're asking why that last name sounds familiar, David is the younger brother of former Cavalry FC and current Caledonian Thistle loanee Abram Peppel. Another injury in the first half worth mentioning was the Tartans' tall center back Joel Martins Correa, as he had to be helped off the pitch in the 38th minute after a collision with Charles Nana. If they had the stretcher out there in Edmonton, they probably would have called it out. That injury would force former FC Edmonton player Chance Carter into the match. We obviously wish a speedy recovery to Joel. But Foothills would find their goal in the stoppage time off a rapid counter off a blocked corner. A nice through ball from the boot of Charles Nana would find Owen Antoniuk, and Foothills would score to lead for their first time all season. Then on the other side of half, Charles Nana would get involved again in the 62nd minute. He took the ball off center back David Hope, and a few passes later it was Antoniuk again slotting it home for his brace. Now you think with only 28 minutes, that would be all there would be in the match. And you'd unfortunately be wrong. Some amazing individual efforts from left back Michael Ho would rally the Tartans back. He would earn the corner that would lead to Stuart Jameson's goal in the 73rd. He'd put the cross in the 80th minute to get Philip Massery his goal. And his individual play would lead to a pass to a dagger in the stoppage time from Habib Assem that would send Foothills back home pointless on the men's side. Well, they still have the one from their first match against the Callies, and they sit at the bottom of the table with that single point. Speaking of the Callies, this week's Match of the Week presented by Alberta's Own Media takes place at Broadview Park on Friday as Callies United will host the Scottish. First match is at 5:30. We hope to see you there.
A couple more things we want to mention here before we wrap up today. We are in an international window right now, and there are some players with Calgary connections that are currently playing in some matches right now. So I think the first one to talk about would be Malcolm Shaw, who we alluded to earlier about he's going to be absent from this week's Cavalry match.
Yeah, he was called up by Trinidad and Tobago and was an unused substitute in their game against Grenada this week.
Yeah, I think it's he didn't get used, but I have a feeling we're going to see him in this next game because I think tying with Grenada it would be kind of considered a bit of a disappointment for the Soccer Warriors. So I think they'll be probably switching up the lineup a bit for their next match against Bahamas. So we'll see, but I think there's a pretty decent chance we're going to see him in the match on Saturday, I believe.
And then another player with Calgary connections who played internationally this week, former podcast guest and former Cavalry FC player Dominic Sator. He got on just before the hour mark in Canada's 4-0 loss to the Netherlands.
I didn't watch the game in its entirety, but I saw some highlights and he got in 50-some minutes in, and it was probably a bit of a rough outing for him. I think that a few of the goals were scored in sort of the time that he was out there in that last half hour.
Yeah, I know right after he got on, about 6 minutes later, Wout Weghorst scored for the Netherlands, and he was Zator's mark. So not a great way to introduce yourself to the game. I wouldn't say he was completely at fault on that goal, but he was definitely one of the defenders who was kind of caught off guard by it. Overall, I mean, a pretty strong first half from Canada, but everything really unraveled in the second half, and the Dutch really kind of ran through Canada. They really had no troubles finding the back of the net in the second half. And unfortunately, Zator was on for that entire onslaught of offense by the Dutch.
And there's one more international matchup that had a Calgary connection. There was another World Cup qualifier. It was Haiti against St. Lucia, and we saw local player Kaniga Elva. He was featuring for St. Lucia, and he got the start, and actually he got the goal for St. Lucia in a 2-1 loss to Haiti. So he did get out there, scored a goal, wasn't quite enough to get a result, but we're trying to make sure we don't miss anybody, and he's active in World Cup qualifiers as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Good spot, Jason. I didn't know about that, but obviously we've talked about Kaniga Elva before on this podcast, and his decision to play for St. Lucia, and looks like he's found the net for them. That's great.
I just wanted to mention again, Scott, the book. It is you still do not have physical copies yet, but it seems to be getting more and more real. This week you were interviewed on the radio.
Yeah, I got to go on Sportsnet 960 The Fan, which is a popular radio channel in Calgary, especially for sports fans. that was a really great opportunity. I chatted with Patrick Dumas about my book, which is called Here Come the Cavalry, chronicling the history of professional soccer in Calgary. Chatted a lot about my journey in writing that book, but also in general about Cavalry, about the CPL, and about the new Calgary Wild women's team, as well as even talked about the Canadian men's and women's national teams a little bit. So I think that interview is still available. If you do some Googling, you could be able to find it. It's a great opportunity for me to continue promoting this book. And yeah, like you mentioned, I don't have physical copies yet, but my cousin who lives in the US does have a copy, and he sent me a photo of it on his coffee table. So that just made me really excited to get my own copies, hopefully in the next 1 to 3 weeks.
I've been checking every now and then, and you can buy it directly from the publisher, Friesen Press, on their website, but it's now listed on Amazon and Barnes & Noble website. And actually, I found it on a couple other ones. I think it was Thrift Books. I think I saw it on.
Yeah,
it's showing up in more and more places. And I do have a couple links on the YYC Soccer website. If you're trying to find it, it's not that hard to find if you do a little bit of Googling, but all you have to do is click there and it'll take you right to the pages. So it's exciting times. And I think what we're going to do here in one of the upcoming weeks is we're going to chat a little bit more detail about some of the research you did and about some of the things you uncovered that you put into the book. So I think we'll leave it for this week, but we've had some of those conversations off air. I'm kind of looking forward to having some of them on air because you did uncover some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't expect, honestly, to write as much about the teams from the 1980s as I did. And I'd really like to talk about some of those teams. We've had guys like Chris Daniel on our podcast. He was a member of the Calgary Kickers in the mid to late 1980s. But before that, there was the Calgary Boomers in 1980-81. And I found some really cool stuff about that team. And I'm really excited to share it on our podcast in an upcoming episode.
I have a very interesting trivia question that would be related to the Calgary Boomers. I'm going to mention it right now, and we'll see if anyone gets it. They can respond. So the Calgary Boomers, they were a team that moved from another city. They were purchased by Nelson Scalabrini, I believe, and he moved them to Calgary. Where were they based before they came to Calgary? I know you know the answer, Scott.
Yeah. And I think Nelson Scalabrini in general, I mean, a lot of Calgarians who've been around a while will remember that he brought the Atlanta Flames to Calgary, the NHL franchise that we still know and love today. And he also played a big role in discovering Wayne Gretzky, getting him to the Edmonton Oilers. So very famous person in Canadian sports history. Yeah, his involvement with Calgary's first professional soccer team was a little more tumultuous.
Stay tuned. We'll talk about that soon. Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can subscribe to this podcast using all the usual podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. You can head over to our website at yycsoccer.com. There's more information about how to subscribe using those platforms, or leave a question or comment, or answer the trivia question. You can follow us on Twitter at YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.